they can just print more of the money. And then instead of becoming the lender of last resort, they're the buyer of last resort. And what you're experiencing today is unprecedented macro environment where asset inflation is scorchingly high. The only thing that's going as parabolic as Bitcoin is asset inflation. And that's because, Bitcoin is a proxied measurement and an index on asset inflation, probably the most accurate one. And so what's happening is you've got a world that's in debt, that cannot pay it back, cannot default on it, and has no choice but to pump Bitcoin. They have no choice. And whether they know it or not, they have to print more dollars, and those dollars have to flood into harder assets, whether that's real estate, whether that's precious metals, whether that's Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is designed to accrue against this exact macro environment. For those that have been around for a decade, this is how we built this fucking thing. Houses don't have every 4 years. Like Chicago real estate's not having every 4 years. In the year 2141, it's not going to be mathematically impossible for me to buy the fucking penthouse with a women's closet in it and build another floor on top of this building.
It might be though.
In 2141, it would be not if Ken Griffin waves $250 million in someone's face. They're going to go build that. It is mathematically impossible to mint another Bitcoin that exceeds 21 million. Real estate doesn't have every fucking 4 years. Gold issuance is totally outside of our control. If engineering gets good enough, to Michael's point, we're gonna we're gonna go mine the fuck out of gold if the incentives are there. And so, no, you're living in a world where, and we all knew this was coming. The only way out is to print your way out. And inflate assets around you. And Bitcoin was designed to be the hardest of those assets and to appreciate against what is an absolute mess until it collapses. And so why am I bullish? I don't know. I read the white paper. I remember sitting in the kitchen with my dad when I was 18 years old, and he explained it to me. I'm like, okay, so we just are going to, as a family, buy a lot of this thing and just be rich as fuck and watch everything else collapse. Got it. Understood. Bullish for the rest of my life until I die. And that's why I'm bullish.
How much new business do you think this will actually bring to Bitcoin and to Strike itself?
Simple answer to that question is a lot. But I think the integration for the Bitcoin and Lightning monetary network has far more reaching implications than just for Twitter, just for Strike as independent businesses. You're talking about a monetary network that spans the entire globe and can achieve instant, nearly free global cash finality, and comparing that with a widely distributed internet company like Twitter, I mean, this is a huge, huge deal, and we're going to see a knock-on effect. Twitter will not be the last. This is the beginning of a broader trend of companies using the world's first global monetary network to interact with their users in a monetary fashion.
All right, well, we'll certainly have to see how popular tipping on Twitter becomes, and then tipping on Twitter with Bitcoin. Obviously, this is a big partnership for you. You say more deals are coming with other players. How do you continue to win those deals and outcompete these other third-party providers who want a piece of this?
Emily, you're going to call me crazy. It comes easy. Why does it come easy? It's because the Bitcoin network is an open monetary network. There are people building on the Bitcoin network all around the world. MIT professors, companies in San Francisco, companies in China. The Bitcoin network gets better day in, day out, whether I work on it or not. You cannot say the same about the PayPal network. You cannot say the same about the Visa network. Those are closed, legacy, outdated financial systems. The Bitcoin network is open, similar to the internet, in the same way that Google is a better company for every new website that comes on. We are a better company for everyone that joins the Bitcoin open monetary network. So we get better whether I do anything or not, and that's the open nature of this system. It's the first open network for money that we've seen in human history. So it comes easy, Emily. It comes easy.
All right, if it's coming so easy, tell us how much volume is being done in the Strike app itself.
A lot. I'm not going to be disclosing that on TV, but we're very happy with where we're at. I could tell you this, the company was founded 18 months ago, and we integrated with Twitter today. We're part of the El Salvador push. I'm tremendously proud of this company and where we're going, and I'm happy with the numbers, but that's my secret to know, and maybe someday yours to find out.
All right, we'll have to ask you again. Let's talk about El Salvador. How's business going there?
It's great. It's great. I mean, again, this is an open monetary network that can achieve physical monetary settlement anywhere in the world. And so now remittance payments from the US to El Salvador is free and instant compared to the legacy Western Union system and solution, which takes days and upwards of 50%. So you're starting to see people migrate to a singular standard to settle value. That is Bitcoin. And you're starting to see a monetary network that's inclusive to all. The El Salvadorian, over 70% of that country was not banked before. Now 100% of that country has access to free and instant remittance and to make and receive payments for goods and services at no cost in an instantaneous fashion. So the world, humanity is moving in the right direction. I'm proud of that, and Bitcoin is a huge proponent and key part of that.
Still, it doesn't necessarily come easy to El Salvador. There's been pushback from the population against this adoption of Bitcoin. What countries do you think are next, seeing how difficult it has been in the country to take this start to finish?
I wouldn't say, listen, I mean, no one throughout human history has ever no country's fully agreed on any move, right? I mean, there's going to be adversaries to any decision that's ever made, especially one at that scale. But I think the biggest proponents and ones to gain advantage from integrating Bitcoin as a network and as a monetary asset are emerging markets. Emerging markets face unprecedented macro environment with the monetary expansion that's happening at central banks right now. It is not okay, and it is crushing those markets. And you're talking about emerging markets that are relatively unbanked. You're talking about citizens that don't have access to basic human freedoms and a high quality of life because they're based on a cash standard, and they're excluded and gatekept out of the monetary networks that you and I in the developed world can utilize to live a high quality of life. There is no Venmo in El Salvador. There's no Cash App. The Visa network's not widely distributed. And so emerging markets, one, can hedge themselves against the asinine monetary expansion happening at central banks and protect their purchasing power, protect their savings, and grow their wealth. And they can gain access to the most inclusive monetary network of all time with a simple internet connection. All you need is an internet connection and a mobile device, and you have the best monetary experience in the Bitcoin network.
Okay. So quickly, I know you said early on you'd allow users to keep their funds in Bitcoin or Tether, then exchange that for fiat. Seems like you've dropped the Tether option. Quickly, why is that?
Listen, at Strike, we optimize for the best experience, the best brand. We want to do what's best for our consumers. And people want cash. People want dollars. And so we listen to our users, we iterate. I mean, one of the key properties of building an experience that's valuable is being a good listener and being patient. And so we're constantly iterating. Perfection, there's no finish line in building software. It's a constant iterative process. And so we continue to add features to our product and add services that our consumers want. And so it's really as simple as that.
We're here in Chicago, David here in a Starbucks in El Salvador. David has his Strike account linked to his Twitter account, and we're gonna make a free instant cash final remittance payment over Twitter. Go search David's Twitter account on my phone. I'm gonna find his tips button, and I'm gonna send David $10 over Twitter. Open my non-custodial Lightning Moon wallet. Anyone in the world can download, and I'm just gonna hit send. We just made an instant free remittance payment from Chicago, Illinois, USA to San Salvador, El Salvador, over Twitter. Why would anyone ever use Western Union again? When you take one of the world's largest social internet networks and you combine it with the world's best open monetary network, Twitter accidentally becomes one of the best remitting experiences in the world.
Let's just take a step back and explain what the vision is. What does Strike do?
Julia, first of all, how are we this morning? Thanks for having me. Strike, the thesis we hold at Strike is that Bitcoin, the monetary network, is the best monetary network in human history, Julia. It's the only inherently global monetary network we've ever seen, and it offers finality both instantly and at relatively no cost anywhere in the world. And so we make use of that monetary network as it compares to the Visa monetary network or the Western Union monetary network or the Square monetary network or the PayPal monetary network. And we use the Bitcoin monetary network, not necessarily to speculate on the price, but as financial rails under the hood to make for efficient, free, global, and instant payments. And we're talking about remittance, we're talking about checking out at commerce, we're talking about online tipping, and we make use of this really granular innovation for humanity in monetary network sense.
Okay, so we've got the Bitcoin network. We've also got something called the Lightning Network. And I know you were one of the earliest developers of this. Before we dig into the details of this global payments network that we're talking about, just explain the importance of the Lightning Network, because I do think my viewers need to understand how much of a game changer that is too when you're talking about particularly efficiency and speed.
You got it. Yeah, so everyone's familiar with the mainstream media critiques that Bitcoin is it's too slow, supposedly, to make use of payments, and it's too expensive, right? So the Lightning Network set out to achieve and solve those two variables. Is one, can we solve the variable of time for finality? Can we make a Bitcoin transaction instant? And then two, can we solve the variable cost so that a Bitcoin transaction isn't too expensive to buy a cup of coffee? And those were the two optimizations the Lightning Network set out to solve. And so when you take the Bitcoin legacy monetary network and you combine it with the protocol of the Lightning Network, now you have a monetary asset and a monetary network that's inherently global, and those two variables solve, where finality can be achieved instantly and finality can be achieved at relatively no cost. Again, no other monetary network in human history can say the same, and that's why it is such a big deal.
I mean, this is basically what Facebook was envisioning, I think, with Libra, but everyone went, whoa, we don't want to give Facebook that kind of power. Twitter just seems to, obviously with help, got there first. And I suppose that's no surprise given Jack Dorsey's interest in crypto. But can all the big social networks now in some way sort of tap into this via the capabilities of the Lightning Network?
Of course. Let me draw it akin to the internet, Julia, in the sense that all of these companies are tapped into the internet. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, they all use the World Wide Web. They all use HTTPS, TCP/IP requests and live on the same standard for communication. Bitcoin as a monetary network is doing the same for money. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, they can all interface with their users in a monetary, global, instantaneous, and free fashion on a singular standard for money in the same way that they operate on the singular standard for communication. Bitcoin network is not an optional monetary network. It is the monetary network to operate for instantaneous global settlement. And how different companies, different services, different internet networks like Twitter and Facebook, how they deem to use it is up to them. But it's a singular standard. In the same way that we don't have a lot of internets, we have one. We won't have a lot of monetary networks. We will have one that offers instantaneous free global settlement.
I mean, the key here is, and it was something that I realized when I got to the United States. It was like, you want to send somebody money. Do you have Venmo? No. Okay. Do you have PayPal? Yeah, I do. Oh, okay, great. Then I can send via PayPal. Do you have Chase Pay? No, but I have Venmo. No one interacted with everybody else. So we needed some way of bringing all these sort of payment systems, these individual payment systems, together. I think anyone that is involved in sending money from A to B probably sat up and looked at this, whether it's a Visa, a MasterCard, a Western Union with remittances too. I mean, the capacity for this to be a game changer for me is huge. What are the limitations, Jack, as someone who's involved? What are the limitations of this that you can see?
The limitations, to be quite frank, is that we're not all onboarded onto the same standard. You're absolutely correct. If I have my Venmo account linked to my Twitter account, can I receive a tip from Japan? No, because the Venmo network is closed. Only other Venmo users can tip me, and that's restricted to the United States. If I have my Strike app linked to my Twitter account, can I receive a tip from Japan? Yes. In fact, I just did. And we need to get everyone onto the same monetary standard. And let's be clear, that doesn't mean you have to love Bitcoin. That doesn't mean you have to think the Bitcoin price is going to the moon, right? We're using it under the hood. So as a tip comes in from Japan on the Bitcoin rails, Strike's going to take the Bitcoin, auto-convert it to dollars, and credit you the dollars. So users don't know Bitcoin's being used, but it's a standard under the hood. So there's a world not far from here, Julia, where my Venmo account can pay my Cash App account. My Cash App account can pay and tip on Facebook. My Facebook account can tip someone on Instagram. Instagram can tip on Twitter. If we're all on the same standard in the same way that we're all on the same internet, interoperability and connectivity becomes seamless, easy, global, instant, and free.
Yeah, and the point here is that you don't have to accept Bitcoin, for example. If it's transferred in Bitcoin, you could accept to receive it in US dollars or Japanese yen, to your point, if it's coming from Japan. Okay, so I mentioned in the introduction that it was virtually costless. What is the relative cost? I mean, if you're doing like a transaction on a credit card, the average cost, I guess, is around 2.5%. How low and what is the cost of using this? And if it is so low, Jack, how does Strike make money?
Yeah, well, how low can it get? That low.
Yeah, race to the bottom.
Zero. Race to the bottom, baby. Yeah, so let's talk about the 2.5% of a card processor. Why? It's because all of the legacy fixed costs and intermediaries, that's the key point, that are required to achieve settlement. When I go check out at a Starbucks, Julia, the dollars that I'm pledging to pay Starbucks don't instantaneously somehow jump out of my debit card and pop into the cash register. No, there's a lot of intermediaries, banks, credit association, balance sheet float that's required to achieve settlement for Starbucks to actually retain the dollars that I pledged to pay them. And that is why it's 2.5%. So for Strike, monetizing this is easy. Monetization is built into the system. Instead of a large retailer paying 2.9%, Strike we could charge them 0.05% if we want. And all of those 0.05%, it's all cash profit. And no other processing or monetary network can bring prices down that low because of the fixed cost. They'd go out of business. They'd go bankrupt. So Strike, we can be as revolutionary as with tech as we are with pricing, and monetization is built into the system in that sense. And to all the legacy monetary networks that just can't compete.
And it's not instant, but it's far quicker actually than what we're seeing today in terms of the old payment rails, quite frankly. As any small business owner watching knows, it can take days and weeks for transactions to settle, and that can be a huge problem for any business, which is why I think this is also so transformative as well. Know your customer. How are you getting around that? Because, I was speaking to the chief legal officer of Gemini, which is a big cryptocurrency exchange, and they were talking about the challenges of know your customer rules when we're talking about the crypto space in particular and trying to understand who's doing what, particularly where regulators are concerned. How do you get around that? Very quickly, Jack.
We don't get around anything. We're a regulated entity. We comply with regulation. We take it very, very seriously. And compliance is a big deal. Listen, I mean, we're living in an extraordinarily disruptive time. Imagine a world before the internet. It seems scary. And we're living through a similar dematerialization and disruption for money. It's the same thing. And so everyone around the world, whether you're a consumer, a retailer, a business, or a regulator, is adapting, learning. And so we're good relationships. We're compliant, always looking to learn. And so we're not getting around anything. We're executing and working in lockstep as we should.
I should have said how are you handling it rather than getting around it. I didn't mean to infer that you were bypassing any rules, Jack. You're sensitive to that. Now, I was going to ask you about El Salvador, but I don't have time. I'm going to have to get you back. I have to ask where you are. You look like you're in the most phenomenal walk-in wardrobe in the world, except it's empty. Jack, where are you?
I am in a giant empty women's closet. You're exactly correct, Julia.
Not necessarily a woman's.
You're right. I guess technically it's a giant empty men's closet because it's mine. It's a good point.
I could definitely feel that. I could definitely feel that.
Chimbera saw that this is financial inclusion, that this is a network and a monetary system that doesn't hold any bias, and there's no intermediary that could tell him that he's not allowed. And we did something amazing here. And we were onboarding 20,000 Salvadorans a day, and most of them didn't have bank accounts. And remittance was free. Remittance was instant. Lightning Network works, man. The Lightning Network works. And in real time, we're improving the GDP of the country. And so then I got a message on behalf of the president of the country. And he wanted to talk. I called my dad. Just kind of pissed my pants. But we talked. This guy's name is Yusuf. And we talked about life. We talked about anime. We talked about how to provide a high quality of life to everyone in the world, about financial inclusivity, about human freedoms and where we lost them and how we can reinstill them. We talked about the world we want to live in and the fact that we build the tools that shape the world that we end up living in. And I met more of the government, and I became friends with the security guards. It's a big rifle. And they dropped some really heavy stuff on me. Over 70% of the active population in El Salvador doesn't have a bank account. They're not in the financial system. They had a huge problem of financial inclusivity and providing their citizens with basic human freedom. And so they asked me to help write a bill, and that they viewed Bitcoin as a world-class currency, and that we needed to put together a Bitcoin plan to help these people and give them hope and give them a quality of life, and that you can live where you're born in, you don't have to leave, and when you send money home, they're not going to take fucking half of it. And I worked really hard, and I lived there, and I got to know the community, and I made friends that I hope will be at my wedding someday. And so with all that being said, I'd like to invite now someone I've spent some time with to share a message.
My name is Jack Mallers, and I'm president of El Salvador. Great ideas are beautiful and have great power. But like most beautiful things, they can also be more fragile than we think. When I was a kid, we thought about the future and we were delighted by its possibilities. We couldn't wait for it to happen and be part of its creation. But now, ask almost anyone what they think about the future, and they will say something along the lines of nuclear war, climate catastrophe, hunger, pestilence, the death of life. We didn't take care of the beautiful idea that we create our own future, that we as humanity can do almost anything that we imagine. Our ingenuity, what separates us from other species. In El Salvador, we are trying to rescue this idea and start the design of a country for the future, using the best ingredients that makes us who we are, while using sensibility to find the best examples of ideas from history and around the world. I believe Bitcoin could be one of these ideas. That is why next week, I will send to Congress a bill that will make Bitcoin a legal tender in El Salvador. In the short term, this will generate jobs and help provide financial inclusion to thousands outside the formal economy. And in the medium and long term, we hope that this small decision can help us push humanity and this economy deep into the right direction. I enter politics to leave a legacy for my country. By while doing it, and by working with like-minded people, maybe we can help create a legacy for the world.
He got me a gift. He got me a gift, a soccer jersey. It's pretty sick. I want to read my favorite part from the proposed bill. Central banks are increasingly taking actions that may cause harm to the economic stability of El Salvador. That in order to mitigate the negative impact from central banks, it becomes necessary to authorize the circulation of a digital currency with a supply that cannot be controlled by any central bank and is only altered in accord with the objective and calculable criteria. So as of now, El Salvador is set to be the first Bitcoin country and the first country to make Bitcoin legal tender and treat it as a world currency and have a Bitcoin on their reserves.